I still shudder inside. My mother kind of pushed me into all these things about to train to be an altar boy.
At the time, his grandfather passed away, and his parents sent him to the church to be counseled, and he stayed the night there in the rectory and for counseling. And at the time, my husband was molested.
My parish priest, after Mass one day, he took me and kept me in the sacristy and had me sit on his lap, and he kept kissing me and fondling my genitals. And he'd always dismiss the other altar boy and kept me alone. My mother thought how nice it was that this priest took interest in me because I didn't have a father. So she sort of encouraged me to go out with him. And he'd take me to the local airport in one of the back roads and used to do oral sex on me.
My abuse started when I was a very little girl and continued until I was a teenager. My perpetrator started off with having me sit on his lap and telling me how much he loved me, and I became bonded with him. And I became bonded in a way that I realized that I would do anything to keep him happy. And I think that's been the hardest thing with the abuse, is to admit that I loved him, which clearly speaks to the devastation of the manipulation of my mind and the confusion. For some survivors, when it starts so young, the perpetrator tends to not escalate to intercourse. That was not the case for me. He raped me. He raped me more than once. And as horrible as that is, it was not, he not only raped my body, but he raped my mind and my soul.
So after dinner, he drove me down the road. It was by St. Vincent's College in Latrobe. There was a seminary, St. Joseph's Seminary, where I guess the priests were educated. And it's back on the right, and it's a very dark wooded place. And he parked in the back of a parking lot and in the dark, and proceeded to touch me, rub my penis. He put his hands down my pants. He unzipped my pants, and he performed oral sex on me. And then he forced me down on him. And to this day, I still shudder inside, thinking the first time he raped me. And then he didn't even bother driving me home. He dumped me off into church and told me to walk home. Told me not to say anything. Proceeded then to kind of brainwash me into saying this is what God wanted. I perceived a priest as God's representative on earth. I felt it was like God on earth. Felt like I was having sex with God.
Who was I going to tell? Well, at that time, who was I going to tell? Of course, my mother wouldn't believe me, because at that time we thought priests were held in the highest esteem. They were so holy that nothing like that would happen.
I couldn't tell anyone. I felt all alone. I didn't tell my parents, one, because he told me not to. Like I said, he said this is what God wanted. And this was between he and I, and no one else was to know about it. So I didn't tell anyone, and I don't know, possibly I didn't know whether anyone would believe me. I don't know. I didn't even know what sex was. I didn't know what was going on.
I think sometimes I thought about telling someone, but I think I was really clear. I got messages from my family that we had to be so grateful to him, that he was wonderful, that he was God-sent and godlike. So I didn't tell my mom, and I didn't tell anybody in the beginning.
I wasn't the first and I wasn't the last. He had been transferred several times from different parishes.
We knew that the priest went on to another school to do this, and there was counts that he did this to other children, at least 20 other children. And it's just the fact that he's out there, and we have children, so that made it even worse.
Yes, later on when I saw him arrested on TV for molesting 3 other altar boys, my memories just kind of flooded back and everything made sense in my life.
It affected our everyday life. He had problems with sleeping, he had problems with working, he had problems with every day. Every day this affected my husband. He became paranoid, just thought everyone knew in our whole town and the whole work site. He ended up losing his job because he got in an argument because of this. And he stayed home for the last 6 months with our children, but he wouldn't go out of the house, he wouldn't be involved in activities, he wouldn't do anything. He just felt that everyone knew and that everyone, would know, and so he sheltered himself for the last 6 months.
It's something that will never go away. It changes you in every aspect. That religion, that comfort that people get from going to church or any organized religion was stolen from me.
It has affected me in many ways. I have such low self-esteem, and I always did. I have such fear of men, being touched by men. I have such a problem with being affectionate. With my wife, I have a problem holding my grandchildren or my children because I always think of holding them. It always comes back to me, this priest having me sitting in a chair and abusing me.
My husband committed suicide on February 18th, 2006, and I think this had a huge part of it, when he was abused by a priest. We have 3 daughters. Madison, she's 7, Alexis is 5, and Emma just turned 2 a week after my husband's death. My husband was a stay-at-home dad because he wasn't working, and he did everything for them. So it's tough on us now. Not only did they take my husband, they took my kid's dad.
There are so many survivors who don't have a voice, who can't find their voice yet.
My husband wouldn't talk about it because the more he talked about it, the more he thought people would know. And I'm talking to you about it because he didn't have that voice to talk. And I think, he wouldn't want anyone else to feel this way. I wouldn't want this to happen to any other children or any other families, because not only does it affect, the victim, it affects your family.
Give us, the victims, the ability to fight back. The ability, as a 10-year-old boy, I was too ashamed to contemplate.
It's important for me to talk about this and to advocate for changes in the laws, because it's important to remember that I sit here as an intact 50-year-old woman, and I still feel pain, and I still hurt. But there was no one to speak for the little girl that this happened to. There are so many survivors who don't have a voice, who can't find their voice yet. And I know that it's important for me to be able to do something that can help affect some change, and to have people understand that sexual abuse is a crime that affects people for all their lives, and that if we as a society talk about protecting children, then we really need to protect children. And the way that the laws are written right now, we are not protecting children.